The first gunshot shattered the desert silence like thunder splitting open the sky, and in that single violent second, the fragile piece of the border clinic collapsed into chaos. Dust drifted from the ceiling tiles. A child screamed. A nurse dropped a tray of bandages that clattered across the tile floor. Outside, engines roared and boots pounded against gravel. No one inside that small clinic in southern Texas knew that the quiet volunteer with silver in his beard and tired eyes had once led men through firefights far worse than this. No one knew the gentle nurse checking blood pressures and offering warm smiles was a former 75th Ranger. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet heroes who walk among us unnoticed, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that courage often hides behind the simplest faces. The clinic sat near a lonely stretch of highway outside McAllen, Texas. It was a modest building with faded paint and a hand-painted sign that read, Hope Community Health. Volunteers kept it running. Retirees, nursing students, church groups. And among them was Caleb Lawson, a 62-year-old volunteer nurse who always arrived early and stayed late. His hands were steady. His voice was calm. He wore plain scrubs and a wooden cross around his neck. To most people, he looked like a man who had chosen peace after a quiet life. But Caleb's life had never been quiet. Years ago, he had worn a different uniform. The tan and green of the U.S. Army. The scroll of the 75th Ranger Regiment on his shoulder. He had deployed to places where sandstorms mixed with smoke and where trust meant survival. He had led young soldiers through alleyways and over rooftops. He had carried men who would never see home again. And when he finally retired, the war did not retire from him. It followed him into his sleep, into grocery store aisles, into the silence of his small apartment. So he chose service instead. Not with a rifle, but with gauze and antiseptic. Not with commands, but with compassion. The clinic gave him something the battlefield never could, healing without destruction. That afternoon, the waiting room was full. Rosa Martinez, a single mother of two, sat clutching her son's hand. Her daughter leaned against her shoulder, pale with fever. Dr. Victor Hayes, a young physician fresh out of residency, reviewed charts nervously, still learning to balance confidence with humility. And Grace Turner, a nursing student from San Antonio, followed Caleb around like a shadow, absorbing his quiet wisdom. When the first truck screeched to a stop outside, few noticed. Border towns were used to sudden arrivals. But then came the second truck. And the third. Men poured out, faces covered, rifles slung across their chests. They moved with aggression, not confusion. Not lost. Not desperate. Purposeful. The door exploded inward with a crash that sent glass scattering across the floor. Panic erupted instantly. Patients ducked behind chairs. Someone shouted to call 911. Dr. Hayes froze, clipboard slipping from his hand. Grace gasped, her eyes wide with terror. Rosa pulled her children beneath a row of seats, wrapping her body around them. Caleb did not move at first. He listened. There is a sound to trained violence. A rhythm in footsteps. A pattern in the way weapons are held. Caleb heard it immediately. This wasn't random. It was a cartel crew chasing someone who had run the wrong way. And the clinic was simply in their path. One of the armed men shouted in Spanish, demanding someone. Another fired a warning shot into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. A patient cried out in pain from the shock. The air smelled of gunpowder and fear. Caleb's heartbeat slowed. He glanced around the room, cataloging exits, cover points, distances. His mind shifted into a place he hadn't visited in years. The ranger inside him stepped forward, not with rage, but with clarity. He moved calmly toward Grace, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. He guided her and Dr. Hayes toward the supply room without a word, ushering patients quietly in the same direction. His voice was low, steady, instructing them to stay down, to stay silent. There was authority in it now, something deeper than kindness. When one of the gunmen advanced down the hallway toward the treatment rooms, Caleb stepped into view. He raised his hands slowly, posture relaxed, eyes alert. He spoke softly, redirecting the man's attention away from the hidden patients. The gunman barked orders, shoving him against the wall. Caleb did not resist. He absorbed the shove like he had absorbed worse blows before. But as the man turned slightly, distracted by shouting from the front, Caleb moved. It was swift. Precise. Controlled. He disarmed the attacker with a fluid motion born of repetition and discipline. The rifle clattered to the ground. Caleb incapacitated him without lethal force, lowering him carefully to the floor. There was no anger on his face. Only resolve. Another armed man rounded the corner, surprised by the sight. Caleb used the narrow hallway to his advantage, limiting the man's movement. Years of close-quarters training returned like muscle memory. Within seconds, the second attacker was disoriented and subdued. In the waiting area, chaos continued. But something shifted. The volunteers and patients, seeing Caleb's composure, found slivers of courage within themselves. Dr. Hayes helped barricade the main entrance with overturned furniture. Grace whispered prayers as she shielded the children. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Border Patrol and local police were responding. The remaining cartel members, realizing resistance and hearing approaching law enforcement, fled as abruptly as they had arrived. Engines roared again, fading into the desert horizon. Silence followed. Heavy. Trembling. Caleb stood in the hallway, breathing slowly, his hands steady though his eyes carried the weight of memory. He looked down at the subdued men, then at his own reflection in a cracked picture frame on the wall. For a moment, he wasn't in Texas. He was back overseas, dust in his lungs, radio static in his ear. Then a small hand touched his sleeve. It was Rosa's son. The boy looked up at him with wide, grateful eyes. Not afraid. Just amazed. Around them, patients emerged from hiding. Grace stared at Caleb as if seeing him for the first time. Dr. Hayes approached cautiously, understanding dawning on his face. The police arrived, securing the scene, taking statements. Word spread quickly. Reporters would later call him a hero. But Caleb declined interviews. He did not want headlines. He wanted normalcy. That evening, after the clinic was cleaned and the broken glass swept away, Caleb sat alone on the back steps as the sun dipped below the Texas horizon. The sky burned orange and purple. His hands finally trembled, the adrenaline fading. He whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude that no innocent life had been lost. Grace joined him silently. She did not ask about his past. She did not need to. She simply thanked him for teaching her what real strength looked like. In the days that followed, the community rallied around the clinic. Donations poured in. Volunteers doubled. Rosa brought homemade food for the staff. Dr. Hayes walked a little taller. The children who had once been afraid now waved proudly when they saw Caleb. He remained the same gentle volunteer nurse. He still checked blood pressures and changed dressings. But now the clinic staff understood something deeper. Strength is not loud. Courage does not announce itself. Sometimes the greatest warriors are the ones who choose to heal instead of harm. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something from the heart. If Caleb's journey moved you, if it reminded you that hidden heroes walk among us every day, please like this video, share it, and subscribe so more people can hear stories that restore faith in humanity. And right now, I have a special request. Comment the word hope below if you believe courage and compassion can exist in the same soul. Because in a small clinic on the Texas border, a man once trained for war chose peace every single day. And when violence came knocking, he didn't become a monster to defeat it. He became a shield. And sometimes, that is the bravest thing of all.